Hello, my name is Avery. Welcome to my channel. Today I will be sharing with you my favorite books of the year 2017. So first I'll be going through some honorable mentions, like maybe not my necessarily favorite books, but some really good ones that I would still recommend. Let's start that off with the first book that I read this year, which is The Duff by Cody Keplinger. This book was really fast to read, and that's why it was the first book that I read, because I was actually trying to finish it before 2016 was over. I obviously failed, but it was a good book anyway, and I would recommend it. It has some abuse and stuff, so that's a trigger warning, I guess, kind of thing, but other than that, pretty good. I'm also going to go by these honorable mentions pretty quickly, just for the fact that yeah, there's a couple of them here. And also, if I'm looking down, it's because I have a list down here written down for you, so I have a more structured video. Okay, so the next book that I have here for you in the honorable mentions is The Young Elite by Marie Lu. This is the first book in a dystopian fantasy series kind of thing. I guess it wouldn't be dystopian, it'd be more fantasy, but overall, I really enjoyed this book, a lot. I was actually obsessed with it when I was done reading it. It's only an honorable mention instead of a, actual, favorite, due to the fact that I don't remember much of what happened in it. I remember a couple big events that I can't say because of spoilers, but for the most part, I don't recall. I don't even remember the names of them, honestly. I just remember, the ending, and that's it. But anyway, good book, would recommend. Kind of sad that I didn't jump straight into the Rose Society after I read this, because now I feel like I'd have to reread this book to get into the Rose Society properly, but overall, yeah, pretty good book. Okay, the next book that I have here in the honorable mentions is over here. Fallen by Lauren Kate. This is actually funny because if you have seen my least favorite or worst read books of 2017, the third book in this series is actually on that list. But as I kind of mentioned in that video, I really enjoyed this first book, and so it's on this list. I really enjoyed it. It was a really fast read. I got through it in 3 hours maybe, which is pretty quick for me considering that I'm a slow reader. But overall, it's pretty good. It's kind of bland as you get further along in the series. But if you start off with just the first one and kind of end it there, it's good. I wouldn't recommend continuing. The third book is kind of drawing a line in boringness and stuff. But the first book overall was good, so I do recommend that. The next book that I have, I do not actually physically own because I borrowed it from my school library because we had to read it. We had to, a memoir, nonfiction kind of section in our course, So, this book is The Other Wes Moore by Wes Moore. This is a memoir following two boys both named Wes Moore, and they both started off in the same part in life. And they had the same capabilities to do different things, but they end up drastically. One ends up in jail because he robbed a jewelry store, and then the other one ends up a veteran who's accomplished some pretty great things. So it's really interesting seeing the parallels between people's lives and how life can change pretty drastically, really quickly. So that's a good book. The Other Wes Moore by Wes Moore. The next honorable mention that I have here had a sequel also on my least favorite books of this, and this is Hush Hush. I would recommend the first 3 books. 3 might be but I recommend at least the first 2 books. These books, while they don't have the best content or best writing or best anything in it necessarily, I really enjoyed them. They're really quick reads that you get sucked in really easily. If you're in a reading slump, man oh man, these books will get you out of that real quick. You'll only want to read these. Wow, these books are pretty good if you're suffering from any of that. But yeah, 10 out of 10 would recommend you to read this book. It's an honorable mention because, honestly, it's not necessarily a great, amazing book at all, but, like, it's pretty good if you're looking for a light, easy read that will suck you in automatically. The last honorable mention that I have here is a children's book that most people read as a child, but, you know, I don't do that. I started reading young adult books when I was in 4th grade, so I kind of skipped over all those children's books and stuff. But that is Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Paterson. It was a really good book. I read it because it was a short book and I was in a kind of reading slump. But I read it and I really enjoyed it, and even though I got spoiled for the ending before I read it, just because it's like, there's been movies made of it and stuff, obviously, according to this cover. But this book was really good, and I would recommend it again if you're in kind of a reading slump and you just want to get out of it. It's really good. The story is pretty easy paced and everything, and it's obviously a short book if you can't tell from that. But definitely it's a good book. Okay, so now that we've gotten through all of my honorable mentions, we're going to start going through my actual favorites of the year. Like the ones that I would highly recommend all the time. These are in order of the date that I read them, not necessarily how much I liked them, or what would be my top favorite of the year. My first favorite is Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. This is just the sleeve because I'm loaning the book out to my mom, but this book was probably the 3rd book I read this year, for the same reason as The Duff. I was just trying to read as many books as I could, so I found all my short books and kind of stacked them up, and I read it, and it was so good. This is basically about this girl who's kind of just like a mystery, and she comes into this town that isn't necessarily like the most cheerful or the, like, I know it's a cardinal sin to take notes in your books, but, you know, like, I don't do it often, but when I do it, it means it's a pretty, like, good book that I'm enjoying a lot. So, you know, I marked this book up quite a bit because, oh no, that was somewhere. Because it was a good book, and I would definitely recommend it. It follows the story of this girl's basically entire life from the time, like, from her first memory to, like, when she's, like, 40 something, I feel like. It goes, back and forth a little bit between, her, like, currently and her in the past. And also, it's a movie, which is pretty good, pretty cool. The movie's pretty good. They can't obviously have everything that happens because this book is crazy. There's stuff that you can't believe is real life, and that's what makes it read like fiction, which makes you read it pretty quickly. And wow, this great. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. This book was great. My friend recommended it to me, and I am forever indebted to her. The next book that I don't have the physical books for. Again, because I'm loaning it out to a friend over winter break, because it's one of my favorite series of all time. Oh my gosh, I marathon read all the books. I couldn't stop thinking about the books until I was done with the entire series and the 2 novellas that are published. And that's the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. Oh my gosh, her writing style is beautiful. I mean, like, you've probably heard that before. Like, it's a really hyped up book. But her writing style is beautiful. And the story is really good. And, you know, it kept me, like, normally I can't read a series, like, back to back. It kind of, I'll get bored of the characters and all the things that are happening. But that, oh my gosh, those books. I finished the 3rd book, and then I couldn't stop thinking about the characters. Like, I had to read fan fiction of the characters to get, like, to feel fulfilled inside, because I had been with those characters from, like, the 1st book, and now was the 3rd book. I forced, someone to drive out to Barnes & Noble to buy me the novella books, because they were so good, and I read them, And wow, 10 out of 10, Shatter Me series, all 3 books. The second book is a little bit much, but it's worth it in the long haul. It's worth it in the long haul. 10 out of 10. Don't stop reading those books. They're so good. Read them. And that's also one of my other most anticipated reads of 2018 is she announced a 4th book. I know it wasn't supposed to be there, so I don't know if I should be excited or, like, not excited. But it was one of my favorite series of all time, so I'm pretty excited for that book. Okay, the next book that I have is over here. And it's also another pretty hyped up book on BookTube, and that's Amy and Ryder's Epic Detour by Morgan Matson. This book is a really light read. I read it in a day because it was really easy to read, and I really liked it, and all the, like, you know, it was really good. I just liked it. I don't really have much to say about this book, just it was really good, and it's in my favorites just because I liked it so much. But I feel like I don't need to say anything about this because it's such a hyped up book in the first place that, like, you know, most people know about it. But anyway, if you don't, pretty good book. It's a contemporary, and it's a really fast book to read due to the fact that there's, like, receipts and stuff, and there's, there's, like, a bunch of stuff in there, like, kind of thrown in that'll help you. And it's also kind of one of the more mysterious contemporaries that I've read, just because there's kind of, like, a backstory thing going on that you don't know about, like, and you learn it as the book goes on. Yeah. Okay, the next 2 books that I have, I read in the past 2 days, and they're the reason why I'm doing this video after I did my least favorite books. And this book is I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak. This book, I read it to try to get, I read it because I needed to get, I really want to get 100 books done by the end of 2017. I have 4 left to go, but this is one of the ones that I used to try to read that. And wow, this book is really good. I should have actually stuck it in with my honorable mentions. It would have been, like, one of my favorite books of the year, except for the last couple pages. They kind of were extra, and I feel like without the last 5 or so pages, like, being in there, it would have been a better book. But, nonetheless, this book was really great, and I really recommend it. The writing style was great. The storyline was great. You know, it's just a really interesting book. I Am the Messenger by Markus Zusak. Okay, the last book that I have for you guys to share is another book that I read in a day. And I read it the day I got it. I got it on Christmas. I read it at Christmas. I neglected my family to read this book because I was so excited about it. And it's also a pretty hyped up book. But this is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. This book was so good. I, like, cried. I like, was crying for the second half of the book. And, like, I know it's a short book, but still, to cry for the whole second half of a book, that's a lot. That's a lot of emotion, you know, and a book it was a really good book. I'm a book crier, but still, it has to be a pretty good book if it's gonna make me cry for half of the book. But, I feel like this book shouldn't really have much said about it, because I was, like, misled thinking about what the book was about when I went into it, just because of what I've heard from people. So I'm gonna leave this kind of, like, just there. You should read it. You shouldn't read about it. I feel like you should read it without knowing what's gonna be inside of it, kind of. So, yeah. I will tell you that it's a contemporary, and I will tell you that it's really good, 5 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that's it for all of my favorite books of 2017. I mean, I still have a couple books to read this year, 4 to be exact, but I'm assuming that none of them will compare to any of these wonderful books that I have stuck to the side over here. So thank you very much for watching, and thank you for staying this long if you did. It's a pretty long video just because I'm ranting about, like, I'm happy ranting, but it's still ranting. Okay, anyway, so, I'll have linked down below, my Goodreads and my Instagram, my Instagram and then my Bookstagram. I don't know, Bookstagram is the more important one, but I'll have my personal one there too, just because why not. I'll also put down there my least favorite books of 2016, so you can see how those 2 series that I talk about, because I talk about it more in depth over there. This is just me talking about the good things about the series. So anyway, thank you so very much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video that I have up. There's also one book that I forgot to mention in one of my favorites, and that's By Your Side by Casey West. I listened to it on audiobook, so I don't have it in a physical form, but really good book. I just completely forgot to add it because I don't know. I just abandoned the list, I guess. Okay, bye. I'd also just like to say it's kind of really sad. I didn't read any Rick Riordan books this year, like at all, any of them, but I'm wearing this shirt and I feel like I shouldn't be wearing this shirt because I haven't read any of his books this year and that's bad. But, you know, goals of 2018, read all of Rick Riordan's books. Am I right? Yeah.